Hi, I'm Blair Burds. In today's society, the portrayal of violence in media is seen far too often. The number of violent scenes that occur in movies, television shows, and video games are sending the wrong message to the youth of society. Creators of these shows, movies, and games are sending the message that violence isn't a big deal and it is okay to express violent behaviors. Children learn best by observing others' behaviors, and when they spend a decent amount of their time watching TV or playing video games, they are being exposed to violence that can affect their own behaviors. For example, if a child's favorite character in a movie is the bad guy or the antagonist, then chances are they will observe their behavior and want to mimic it on a certain level. Even if they mock the character in a harmless way by pretend fighting with their friend, they are still being exposed to levels of violence that is affecting their behavior. As they grow older, their exposure to this type of media not only increases, yet they develop an understanding of the violence they are viewing. Violence in the media promotes violent behaviors, and to minimize the issue, exposure to violent media should be monitored by adults. According to a study conducted by Eric Schreiberger, by their 18th birthday, a person has witnessed over 40,000 murders on TV. This shocking statistic focuses solely on murder, which is only one type of violent behavior, which concludes that we have seen other cases of violence on TV alone. The effects of media violence don't have to necessarily occur right after the viewing of the violence. However, the violent behaviors can begin later on in life as a result of excessive exposure to violence as a child. Although there can be long-term effects, there can also be short-term effects as well. According to the American Psychology Association, some effects include: children may become less sensitive to the pain and suffering of others, children may be more fearful of the world around them, and children may be likely to behave in aggressive or harmful ways towards others. All of these effects negatively impact children's behaviors and way of thinking. So in this picture, a child is watching a movie, and it says most major films are not intended for children, which is true because when creators are thinking of like the plot or storyline of their movies, they're not keeping the children's like behaviors and needs in their mind. Right after viewing the violent content, a person can feel or think in a more aggressive ways. Although this feeling or thought can be brief and eliminated in a short amount of time, it is still affecting their overall behavior. They may also provide more aggressive solutions to problems that they think are acceptable and beneficial. Another major effect, which can be seen after viewing extreme violence in the media, is desensitization to the pain and suffering of others. This type of behavior reduces the likelihood of pro-social, empathetic, helping behavior when viewing a victim of violence. Although the relative effects of violence in the media can be short-term or long-term, the levels of exposure are affecting behaviors of society. Some researchers may pose the counterclaim that violence in the media does not promote violent behaviors. A study done by Massachusetts General Hospital provides research in relation to the counterclaim. The hospital believes that youth who have aggressive traits and are stressed are more prone to delinquent and bullying behavior and are also drawn to these games, but their behavior in real life is not predicted by playing these games. The research states that all youth are protected by violence in the world by having close, supportive relationships with family and peers. Mass General Hospital also believes that previous research that has been conducted on this study is lacking direct relationships with violent video games and youth violence, which leads them to believe that violence in the media and violent behaviors have no correlation. The studies they conducted on children in relation to violent movies concluded that only a small percentage of children are affected, and the affected children are the ones who can't distinguish between reality and fantasy. Although the counterclaim provides solid evidence, the claim that violence in media promotes violent behaviors is said to be true. Numerous researchers have conducted studies on the claim and discovered there is an evident relationship between violence in media in relation to violent behavior. Psychologist Albert Bandura studied social learning and children's ability to imitate for 15 years and found consistently disturbing findings when relating violence in media to children's behaviors. As a result of 15 years of studying the topic, it can also be said that when children consistently view violence in media, they are more susceptible to behaving in a violent way. As media outlets are continually growing, there are more access to violent games, movies, and TV shows. Although this is a growing issue, there are ways to limit children's viewing of these violent media sources. To help prevent this issue, parents can use the tips provided to keep their child's aggressive behavior in check. As a parent, if you notice your child is acting out in angry or aggressive ways, it may be wise to monitor their violence exposure by not allowing violent games, movies, or TV shows. This could help prevent future issues with violence. Another helpful tip can simply be keep an eye on what they're watching or playing and make sure it's appropriate for their age and maturity level. This can help prevent inappropriate behaviors. By monitoring and limiting children's exposure to violent media, it can aid in preventing violent behaviors. So in this picture, it's just reiterating the tips that parents can use when monitoring their children's media. So know what your kids are playing and watching. Know what's developmentally appropriate, so what's appropriate for their age level. And set guidelines for the amount of time your kids can watch TV and play video games. In conclusion, exposure to violent media increases violent behaviors among children. There can be short-term and long-term effects. However, neither one leads to a positive outcome. Although the counter provided evidence against the claim, it is still said to be true that violence in media promotes violent behaviors. To help minimize behavioral behaviors, parents should utilize the helpful tips that were provided. To conclude, violence in the media will affect how a child feels, thinks, and behaves.